10-year-old Tommy Warren, a boy with autism, wandered away from his family's campsite in Blue Ridge National Park. No one imagined his guardian angel would be a retired police K-9 named Colt, a German shepherd abandoned at a shelter after his handler was forced to retire due to a devastating injury. For 3 intense days and freezing nights, Colt became more than a dog. He became Tommy's silent protector, keeping him warm, leading him to water, and shielding him from the wild. Search crews scoured the dense forest, hope slipping away with every passing hour. But what makes this rescue so extraordinary isn't just the unbreakable bond that formed between a nonverbal child and a discarded dog. It's what happened when Tommy's father met Colt's former handler. A connection so powerful, so unexpected, it left even seasoned rescue veterans speechless. This is the story of how an unwanted K-9 didn't just save a lost boy. He found redemption, reunited 2 broken families, and reminded us that sometimes fate has a plan far greater than we can understand. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow, there's something even more special coming your way. The steel gates of Cedar Creek Animal Shelter echoed shut behind Grace Morgan as she made her morning rounds. The air buzzed with barks and howls, hope and desperation blending into one. But at the very end of the hallway, in the final kennel, there was only silence. Clipboard in hand, Grace stopped at the last enclosure. Inside sat a German shepherd, still as stone, centered on the cold concrete. Unlike the others, he didn't pace or bark. His posture was upright, focused, like he was waiting for a command that would never come. "Morning, Colt," Grace whispered. The dog's ears perked up, but he didn't move. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, tracked her every step. Still watching, still waiting. Luis Ramirez walked up beside her. "That one gives me the chills," he said. "Too smart for his own good. Been here 3 weeks and hasn't made a sound." Grace shook her head. "He's not creepy. He's trained. Military level by the looks of it. The way he sits, the way he watches. This isn't just some old K-9. Doesn't matter," Luis sighed. "He's a middle-aged police dog nobody wants. Doesn't even act like a regular dog anymore." Grace crouched down, locking eyes with Colt. There was no aggression, just something deeper, something that looked like grief. "His handler was Mike Collins, right?" she asked, not looking away. "Oakwood PD?" Luis nodded. "Yeah. Took a bullet during a convenience store robbery, paralyzed. Couldn't keep the dog. Department couldn't either. Budget cuts." "After all those years," Grace muttered, shaking her head. "They just tossed him aside." Luis gave a tired shrug. "No room for emotion when the numbers don't add up. That's what the chief said." Grace stood, brushing off her pants. "Well, numbers or not, this dog deserves better. I'm going to find him a home if it's the last thing I do." For the first time in 3 weeks, Colt moved. His head tilted ever so slightly, as if he understood every word. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in the quiet suburb of Maple Ridge, Sarah Warren was folding her son's favorite dinosaur t-shirt into a duffel bag. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, casting a warm glow over shelves lined with rocks, feathers, and pine cones, each one carefully arranged by Tommy himself. "Tommy," she called gently, "can you come help me pack for the camping trip?" No reply, but Sarah was used to that. She peeked down the hall and saw her 10-year-old son sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, fully absorbed in a nature documentary about wolves. His fingers fluttered at his sides, a quiet sign of happiness. David Warren stepped behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "He's been watching that documentary all morning," he whispered. "Third time today." Sarah smiled. "He's preparing. You know how he gets. He needs to understand everything about the animals before we head to the park." David nodded, his expression full of love and worry. "Are you sure this trip's a good idea? 3 days in the woods? It might be too much." "Doctor, Johnson thinks it's exactly what he needs. Nature, family time, structure. And you've been working 80-hour weeks. We all need this." David rubbed his eyes. As lead trauma surgeon at St. Joseph's, home had felt like a distant memory lately. "You're right," he said. "I just worry." Tommy loves nature, Sarah replied, motioning to their son, still gently rocking as wolves padded through snow on the TV. He loves animals. It's how he connects. Tommy rarely spoke, and when he did, his words were few, but his connection to animals was deep, instant, and pure. "Tommy," Sarah called again, a little louder. "Time to pack your backpack." He didn't turn from the screen, but his right hand lifted slightly in acknowledgement. That, Sarah knew, was his way of saying, "I heard you, I'm ready." "Why don't you go check on Emma?" Sarah said with a smirk. She's been on the phone with her friends for an hour now, still ranting about having no cell service for 3 whole days. David chuckled as he folded another shirt into the bag. Typical 14-year-old. To her, the apocalypse is just no Instagram. As he took over the packing, his hand paused on a small photo frame on Tommy's nightstand. Inside, a picture of Tommy kneeling next to a therapy dog at school. A rare photo where the boy was smiling, truly smiling. His fingers were buried deep in the dog's fur, his eyes lit up with a joy that David barely saw anywhere else. Running his fingers along the edge of the frame, David whispered to himself, "We really should think about getting him a dog." Across town, fluorescent lights buzzed above Officer Mike Collins as he struggled to hold himself upright on the parallel. Bars inside the physical therapy room at St. Joseph's Medical Center. Sweat dripped from his brow, muscles trembling, the wheelchair shoved to the side for now. "That's it, Mike. Just 3 more steps," Dr. Sandra Miller said gently, staying close but not interfering. "You've got this." Mike clenched his jaw as he dragged his partially working leg forward, inch by inch. Every movement was agony, every breath a reminder of what he'd lost. "I can't," he gasped, arms shaking violently. "Yes, you can," Sandra insisted. "Same as yesterday, just 1 more step." Mike closed his eyes, searching inside for something, anything to push him through. And there it was, Colt, his K9 partner. In his mind, he saw him at the end of the bars, waiting faithfully like he always used to. That image, just a memory now, pulled something from deep within him. With a groan that came from the core of his being, Mike took 1 more shaky step before his body gave out. Sandra caught him just in time, lowering him gently into the wheelchair. "Damn it," he growled, slamming a fist onto the armrest. "That was progress," Sandra said, handing him a towel. "Last month you couldn't even do half that distance." Mike wiped his face, frustration radiating off him. "Not good enough, not nearly." Sandra sat beside him. "Mike, the bullet damaged your spine. The fact that you can move at all is a miracle." Yeah, I've heard the miracle speech," he muttered bitterly. "Tell that to the department that tossed me out. Tell it to Colt, who's probably locked in a kennel somewhere, wondering what the hell happened." Her voice softened. "You still haven't heard anything?" Mike looked away. That pain, that particular pain, was worse than anything physical. "They tried to reassign him. He wouldn't respond. Too bonded to me, so they sent him to Cedar Creek Shelter. That was 3 weeks ago." "Have you thought about visiting him?" Mike laughed, a hollow, joyless sound. "What for? Give him hope? Make him think I'm coming back?" He shook his head. "Better to let it be a clean break." But the words he didn't say hung heavy in the air. Sandra knew what he meant. Everyone in law enforcement did. If a police dog wasn't adoptable, they weren't kept around forever. Resources were limited. Kennels had quotas. "I need to clean up," Mike muttered, wheeling himself toward the door, shoulders slumped under a weight far greater than injury. Sandra watched him go, silent. "Hey, if you're still with us, thank you." Stories like these take time to research and tell, and your support means the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who needs a little faith in the world today. Now let's get back to it. That same afternoon, a dusty pickup truck pulled into the gravel lot outside Cedar Creek Animal Shelter. Ranger Elena Winters shut off the engine inside. At 52, with over 25 years serving Blue Ridge National Park, solitude had always been her comfort. But lately, the silence of her cabin felt more like loneliness than peace. "Just looking," she reminded herself as she adjusted her khaki uniform and stepped out. The shelter was quiet that Wednesday, the front desk nearly empty. Grace Morgan looked up and smiled wide. "Ranger Winters. Don't tell me you're finally ready to adopt," Elena offered a half smile. "Just browsing. The cabin's been a little empty since my old lab passed." "Well, you came on the right day," Grace said. "We've got a few seniors who'd love a quiet home." Elena followed her into the kennel area. A wall of barking erupted instantly. Dogs of every size pressed against their gates, tails wagging frantically, hopeful eyes searching for connection. "Any of these catch your eye?" Grace asked. Elena walked slowly, each hopeful face tugging at her heart, but none felt quite right. She was ready to leave when they reached the final kennel. This one was different. No barking, no pacing. Just a German shepherd sitting perfectly still, spine straight, eyes fixed on her with eerie intelligence. "What's his story?" Elena asked, stopping. Grace's expression shifted. "That's Colt, former police K-9. His handler was injured on duty. The department couldn't keep him, and he wouldn't work with anyone else. Been here 3 weeks, barely eats, won't play, doesn't interact with other dogs." Elena met the dog's gaze. In his eyes, she saw something she couldn't explain. Grief, maybe. Purpose interrupted. Dignity still intact. "Can I go in?" Grace hesitated. "Of course. Just be careful. He's not aggressive, but he's different. Doesn't react like the others." Grace unlocked the gate. Elena didn't rush in. She didn't speak. She didn't even reach out. She simply walked in and sat quietly on the concrete floor, a respectful distance away. Elena sat cross-legged on the kennel floor and waited. No movement, no sound. Just her and the dog, each watching, each measuring. Then, slowly, with the kind of deliberate caution that speaks to deep training and deep scars, Colt rose and began to circle her. Once, twice. His nose worked methodically, cataloging her scent, calculating something in his mind that no one else could see. Finally, he stopped and sat right in front of her. His eyes locked on hers. Calm, steady, present. "You're not just any police dog, are you?" Elena said softly. "I can see it. The way you move, the way you size up everything. Specialized training." Colt's ears twitched. "I work in Blue Ridge National Park," she continued. 200,000 acres of wilderness. Peaceful, quiet. Not a bad place to start over, if you're interested. As if weighing the offer, Colt tilted his head slightly. Then, in a moment so gentle and powerful it made Grace tear up, the German shepherd raised one paw and placed it firmly on Elena's knee. Elena's throat tightened. "Well," she whispered, voice thick, "I guess that settles it." Meanwhile, the Warren family SUV twisted up the winding mountain road toward Blue Ridge National Park, early sunlight breaking through the dense pines overhead. In the back seat, Tommy sat quietly, headphones on to shield him from the noise, eyes fixed on a laminated map of the park trails. His fingers gently fluttered as he traced the path to River Valley Campground. "Site 42, right?" David asked, glancing at Sarah. She nodded, double-checking the reservation on her phone before the signal vanished. "Close to the creek, not too far from the restrooms." In the middle seat, Emma groaned dramatically. 3 days without Wi-Fi? This is basically child abuse." "You'll survive," David said dryly. "Might even discover there's life beyond TikTok." "Doubt it," Emma muttered, but there was the faintest trace of a smile behind her sarcasm. David caught Tommy's eye in the rearview mirror. "Hey, buddy, excited to see the real forest instead of just in books?" Tommy didn't speak, but his hands flapped faster, his way of saying yes. "That's a yes," Sarah translated with a warm smile. As they pulled into the campground, they saw a clearing tucked into the trees. The sound of the creek added a peaceful rhythm in the background. Other families were already setting up, tents, tarps, and the occasional flash of kids racing by. As they began unloading their gear, a park ranger truck rolled in and parked nearby. Elena Winters stepped out, adjusting her ranger hat. Sitting alert in the truck bed behind her was Colt. "Morning, folks!" Elena called with a wave. "Just making my rounds. Need any help settling in?" "We're good, thanks," David said, wrestling with the tent poles. "Although I might eat those words soon." Elena chuckled. "Name's Ranger Winters. If you need anything." She didn't finish. Sarah gasped. Tommy, who normally avoided strangers, had quietly taken off his headphones and was walking straight toward the Ranger truck, his eyes locked on Colt. "Tommy!" Sarah called, alarm rising in her voice. "Honey, come back!" But Tommy kept going, calm, steady, hand outstretched toward the dog. Elena tensed. "He's a former police dog," she warned. "He doesn't usually—" But to everyone's surprise, Colt lowered his head, allowing Tommy to touch him. The boy's fingers slid gently into the dog's fur. A smile, a rare, beautiful smile, spread across Tommy's face. "Well, I'll be damned," Elena whispered. "He doesn't let anyone near him, not even me, most days." Sarah approached, breath catching. "I'm so sorry. Tommy has autism. He usually doesn't approach anyone, but with dogs, it's different." "No apology needed," Elena said, her voice soft. "This is the first time Colt's acted like a regular dog since I adopted him. Your son must be special." Tommy kept petting Colt, entirely focused. Then, in a rare moment, he looked up at Elena and spoke. "He's sad," Tommy said simply. "He lost his person." Elena's eyes widened. "Yes, he did. How did you know that?" Tommy didn't answer, just kept his hand on Colt's fur. David joined them. He's incredibly intuitive with animals. Notices things most people miss. Elena nodded slowly, watching the boy and the dog. "Well, Colt and I do rounds through the campground twice a day. Maybe we could stop by again later?" Tommy looked up with hope. Sarah smiled and gave his shoulder a squeeze. "We'd love that. Wouldn't we, Tommy?" The boy nodded and gave Colt one last pat before heading back toward their gear. As they finished setting up the tent, clouds began rolling in, much earlier than expected. "Looks like rain," David said, frowning at the sky. "We better get the rain fly up." "But Ranger Winters said the weather would be clear," Emma protested. "Mountain weather changes fast," David replied, grabbing the extra tarp. "Let's be ready." By mid-afternoon, the sky had darkened and the wind picked up fast. Inside the tent, the Warren family huddled together as fat raindrops turned into a heavy downpour. "So much for our nature hike," Emma sighed, flipping through a paperback novel. Sarah looked around the tent with a growing sense of unease. "Where's Tommy?" David looked up from the camping stove. "Isn't he in his sleeping bag?" "No. I thought he was with you." David's face changed instantly, calm giving way to fear. "When did you last see him?" Emma sat up. "He was drawing at the picnic table before it started raining. I told him to come inside." Sarah's heart dropped like a stone. Sarah's heart raced as she yanked open the tent flap, rain slashing across her face like icy needles. "Tommy!" she yelled, her voice nearly swallowed by the roar of the storm. The picnic table stood empty. Tommy's drawing pad sat drenched and forgotten, pages warped, his crayons scattered in the mud. "Tommy!" David shouted, stepping into the downpour. But only wind answered, howling through the trees like a warning. Within minutes, the campground had transformed into a search zone. Ranger Winters moved quickly, coordinating rescue teams as the rain intensified. Paths became rivers of mud, and visibility dropped to just a few yards. Chief Ranger Miller stood over a map stretched across the hood of his truck, a tarp flapping uselessly above. "When was the last time he was seen?" he asked, his tone sharp with urgency. "About an hour and a half ago," Elena reported, soaked to the bone. "At the family's campsite. The boy has autism, nonverbal under stress." "Any idea which way he might have gone?" Sarah stepped forward, pale and shaking. "He was fascinated by the creek this morning, and he's been studying wildlife trails nonstop. He might have followed an animal." Miller nodded grimly. "Start grid searches from the campsite. Focus on the creek area first." "That water's rising fast." "I want to help," David said, voice tight, nearly cracking. "You will," Miller agreed, "but with a ranger. These woods turn dangerous fast, especially in weather like this. We don't need another person lost." As the search teams organized, Elena returned to her truck for more gear. That's when she saw Colt. He was standing alert in the truck bed, muscles tense, ears forward. His entire body was rigid. Easy, boy, she murmured, reaching for her emergency kit. But something was wrong. Colt wasn't reacting to her. He was locked onto something in the woods, staring into the storm. Then, for the first time since she brought him home, Colt let out a low whine. "What is it?" Elena asked. Suddenly, Colt sprang from the truck and bolted into the forest, his movements sharp, purposeful, driven. "Colt!" Elena shouted, but he was already gone, swallowed by the curtain of rain. Grabbing her radio, she called in. "Miller, my K9's taken off. Into the woods. I think he's tracking the boy." Miller's voice crackled back through the storm. "Winters, your dog's not certified for search and rescue." "No," she interrupted, breathless, "but he was a police K9. A beat of silence. Then, "Winters, wait for backup!" But Elena was already running, chasing Colt's silhouette through the storm, her boots sinking into mud, trees whipping past, heart pounding. Somewhere deeper in the woods, 10-year-old Tommy Warren huddled beneath a fallen pine, the needles heavy with rain. His jacket was soaked through, and his thin body trembled from cold and fear. He hadn't meant to wander far. He'd just seen a red fox, its bright fur darting through the green, and followed it, completely mesmerized. But the storm came quickly. Everything changed. The forest no longer looked familiar. Every tree was the same, every sound too loud, every sensation overwhelming. Thunder cracked overhead. Tommy clutched his ears, rocking in place, trying to find comfort in the motion, but it wasn't working this time. "Mom," he whispered, but the word vanished into the storm. A sudden rustling in the underbrush froze him in place. Something was coming. Tommy curled in tighter, heart racing, too terrified to move. Then, through the rain, a familiar silhouette emerged. It was the German Shepherd from the ranger's truck. Colt approached slowly, his body soaked but steady, eyes locked on the boy. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, boy and dog, each searching for something they couldn't explain. Then Colt pressed his warm body against Tommy's side. The boy didn't resist. His trembling hands reached for Colt's soaked fur, burying his face into the dog's neck. "Good dog," Tommy whispered. Colt didn't move. He simply lay there, still and solid, a wall against the storm, a shield, and for the first time since he'd realized he was lost, Tommy didn't feel afraid. Darkness fell quickly over the forest. The rain continued to pound, turning streams into rivers and air into mist. Tommy's fingers had gone numb. His body shook violently from cold. Colt, ever watchful, nuzzled the boy and stood. He looked at Tommy with quiet insistence. It was time to move. "No," Tommy whispered, teeth chattering. "Stay." But Colt nudged him again, firmer this time, whining softly. His years of police training had taught him to read body language, and everything about this boy screamed danger. The shivering, the fatigue, the dazed look. This was hypothermia. Colt recognized it, and he knew they had to act. With careful, deliberate motion, the dog coaxed the boy to his feet. Tommy stumbled as he tried to walk, his coordination faltering from the cold. But Colt stayed close, his sturdy body pressed against the boy's side, steadying him with quiet purpose. "Where?" Tommy asked, his voice barely audible against the roar of the storm. Colt didn't bark. He just started moving, uphill, away from the rising creek. And Tommy followed. One hand gripped tightly to Colt's soaked fur, the other swinging slightly with each trembling step. Every few yards the dog would pause, looking back with patient eyes, waiting for the boy to catch up. They moved like that for nearly half an hour, one foot in front of the other, Colt always leading, always watching. Eventually they reached a small, rocky outcropping, a shallow cave tucked just beneath the ridge. The entrance was narrow, barely big enough, but inside it was dry, shielded from the wind and rain. Colt entered first, circling the space, sniffing the shadows, scanning for danger. Satisfied it was safe, he returned to Tommy, who had collapsed in the corner, shaking from head to toe. Without hesitation, Colt curled against him, wrapping the boy in warmth and calm. "Good dog," Tommy whispered, his arms wrapped tightly around the dog's neck. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, A boy and a dog, both lost, both broken in different ways, found something like peace. Back at the command tent, Chief Ranger Miller stood under flapping tarps, rain hammering the plastic roof. He looked across the exhausted faces of the search teams and gave a slow, reluctant shake of his head. "We need to suspend the ground search until morning." Gasps and murmurs followed. Sarah Warren's face drained of all color. "No," she said, her voice cracking. "He's out there, alone. He's just a child." David stepped beside her, trying to stay strong, even as panic churned inside him. "What about aerial support? Thermal drones?" Frank Curtis, a veteran search and rescue leader who had arrived earlier, stepped forward. "Cloud cover's too thick. No helicopters, no drones. We're grounded until this storm breaks." "So we just stop?" Sarah cried. "We give up?" "No one's giving up," Curtis said gently. "We've activated all emergency shelters. If your son finds one, we'll know immediately." David shook his head. "He won't go to a stranger for help, not when he's overwhelmed. He'll hide." A heavy silence fell. A lost child was always a race against time, but with autism and sensory challenges in a storm like this, the odds were terrifying. Then Emma spoke, her voice quiet but certain. "What about Colt, the ranger's dog? Tommy went right up to him today. He never does that." Miller frowned. "Ranger Winter's dog isn't trained for this. He's a retired police K-9. She only just adopted him." "But he took off after Tommy," Emma said. "Didn't you say that?" Maybe he is looking." Miller hesitated. "She followed him, but we lost radio contact about 40 minutes ago. The storm's knocked out half our communications." "So no one's out there right now?" Sarah's voice had gone cold. Quiet. Dangerous. Curtis stepped forward, his voice low but honest. "Mrs. Warren, I've done this job for 22 years. If we push forward now, we risk more lives. My team, your husband, everyone. First Light gives us our best chance." Sarah said nothing. She just folded into David, sobbing into his chest as he held her tightly. Emma sat down beside them, wrapping her arms around both parents. The three of them sat in silence, grief and fear thick in the air. No one said it out loud, but the thought hung heavy. By morning, it might already be too late. Elena Winters crouched beneath a towering pine, radio in hand, desperately trying to cut through the static. Her breath fogged the air, and her soaked clothes clung to her like lead. "Ranger Winters to base," she called. "Do you copy?" Only static. Come on, come on." She lowered the radio. No response. She'd lost Colt almost an hour ago, unable to keep up as the shepherd surged forward with purpose, his instincts taking over. In that moment, he hadn't been the quiet, broken dog from the shelter. He'd been something else. Focused, alive, driven. She swept her flashlight across the flooded forest path, just shadows and rain. No sign of Tommy, no trace of Colt. The storm had turned the park into a maze of mudslides and swollen rivers. If she stayed out any longer, she'd be the next rescue call. Gritting her teeth, she turned toward the nearest emergency shelter. But even as she walked away, her heart stayed in the storm. "Find him, Colt," she whispered into the wind. "Keep him safe." Miles away, in Oakwood, Officer Mike Collins sat alone in his apartment, watching the same storm lash against his window. The TV played quietly in the background, local news he wasn't really listening to, until he heard a name. 10-year-old Tommy Warren is still missing tonight in Blue Ridge National Park. Severe weather has halted search efforts. Mike turned toward the screen. And in an unexpected development, a former police K-9 named Colt, recently adopted by a park ranger, reportedly broke away from his handler during the storm, possibly tracking the missing child. The screen flashed a photo. A German shepherd. His German shepherd. Mike rolled closer to the screen, breath catching in his chest. It was Colt, his partner, his dog, still out there, still working. 3 weeks after being separated from his K-9 partner, Colt, Officer Mike Collins, now wheelchair-bound, sees a news report about the dog going missing in a storm while assigned to a new handler. Despite his physical limitations, Mike insists on joining the search, knowing Colt's advanced tactical and rescue training. With his deep understanding of Colt's behavior, Mike is allowed to help guide search teams remotely. Meanwhile, in the forest, Colt is protecting a young autistic boy named Tommy, who had wandered off during a school trip. The two form a silent bond as Colt keeps the boy warm, finds food and water, and shields him from predators. Colt's years of tactical experience enable him to guide Tommy through the wilderness, always seeking safe terrain and shelter. As search efforts intensify, a breakthrough comes when a piece of Tommy's jacket is found. Mike helps redirect teams to likely extraction points Colt would use. Despite passing near them, rescuers miss the boy due to Colt's protective instincts and training to assess humans before revealing his position. Eventually, after surviving a storm, hunger, and a bear encounter, Colt leads Tommy to a fire lookout tower. Search teams spot them just before nightfall, and a helicopter rescue is launched. Colt refuses to leave Tommy's side and only allows help after hearing Mike's recorded voice commanding him to stand down. Tommy is reunited with his family, and thanks to Colt, he is physically stable. The emotional bond between them proves transformative. Tommy, previously nonverbal, begins to speak and open up. Recognizing the profound connection, Colt's legal handler, Ranger Winters, agrees to transfer ownership to Tommy's family. Back home, Colt adjusts quickly, becoming Tommy's full-time companion and emotional anchor. Mike continues visiting to assist with Colt's training and eventually helps initiate a new program called K9 Connections, repurposing retired police dogs to support children with special needs. 6 months later, the program is formally launched, with Tommy and Colt as the symbolic first graduates. Tommy speaks confidently on stage, crediting Colt with saving his life and helping him find his voice. The initiative gains national attention, and their story becomes a beacon of hope. One boy, one dog, and a bond that changed lives and created a movement.